Hi, my name is Emily. I'm a content specialist here at Workplace Options, and today I'm here to talk to you about the importance of fueling your body and mind the right way and what that means for both employees and their employers. Later in this episode, I will be joined by Lauren Lisko, Internal Wellness Manager and Corporate Fitness Trainer at Workplace Options, who will share with us some tips on how employees can maintain a balanced diet, develop and stick to a sustainable fitness regimen, and improve not only their physical health, but their mental health as well, by practicing healthy habits in the office, at home, or wherever they are. But before we speak with her, I'd like to quickly go over the current state of health and wellness in the workplace and explore how nutrition and physical fitness play a key role in facilitating better health outcomes for employees. The global workforce is once again in the midst of a public health disaster, only unlike what we saw throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, where sick employees were easily identified by the presence of telltale signs of infection, the use of widespread testing, or for extreme cases, by their undesirable trips to the hospital. This crisis is much less overt. While it may be discernibly tamer than what we witnessed during that catastrophic first year of the pandemic, and perhaps causing fewer disruptions to the workplace, it is still doing a number on employees' health, their productivity, and the overall efficacy of the workforce. In the first half of 2022, labor productivity experienced a record-breaking plunge, and while reasons abound as to how this decline came about, signs are increasingly pointing to the phenomenon known as presenteeism, defined as when sick employees, rather than staying home to rest and recover from their illnesses, continue to work, whether in the office or at home. To be clear, presenteeism has always been a challenge in the past, as anywhere between a third to half of all employees still report to work despite being ill. But the problem facing employers today is on a whole different level. To provide some context, back in January of this year, the BLS reported that nearly 8 million U.S. employees missed work due to an illness, injury, or medical problem, the second highest number to be recorded since 1978, and nearly triple the number reported in January of last year. This comes as new data indicates that upwards of 23 million Americans are likely living with long COVID, a term used to describe a host of lingering and/or chronic conditions that people experience weeks, months, or even years following their initial COVID infection, which is keeping millions out of work, forcing just as many to reduce their work schedules, and bombarding millions more with unpleasant symptoms ranging anywhere from migraines and fatigue to insomnia, brain fog, and memory loss, making it harder for them to work at their best. Even now, data suggests that each month, close to 900,000 more workers miss at least a week of work due to an illness than in the years before the pandemic. But between the current cost of living crisis, declining wages, and a looming global recession, people can no longer afford to not work. As a result, more people are now showing up to work sick, rather than taking the needed time off to let their bodies recover. Not only does this hurt their organization and the economy, costing upwards of $1.5 trillion in lost productivity a year, but it also poses serious threats to employees' long-term health and well-being, as presenteeism has been linked to an increased risk of developing mental health disorders, as well as an increased likelihood of a coronary event or major health problem later in life. Ultimately, working instead of resting while sick hurts employees as it can prolong the duration of their illnesses, thwart their recovery, and suppress their immune system, creating a cycle of sickness as they're rendered more susceptible to developing future illnesses. And as experts warn of a triple-demic heading our way this winter, as a variant soup of new COVID strains, an explosion of influenza cases, and re-emerging respiratory viruses start to collide, employees already struggling with bouts of long COVID or the effects of repeat infections are now looking at a disastrous winter ahead and will need to take precautions now to avoid a further spiral into perpetual sickness. So where does nutrition and physical fitness factor into all of this? The answer is that, in many ways, they have largely been catalysts for the decline in both workers' health and their productivity. Diet and exercise are both critical components of the body's immune response. Studies show that a well-balanced diet of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and protein, and at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity are needed in order to maintain optimal immune function, protecting the body from acute illnesses like the flu, the common cold, and COVID-19, as well as chronic conditions like heart disease, strokes, diabetes, and COPD. A healthy diet and regular exercise are also responsible for fueling the brain, causing much-needed boosts in mood, concentration, memory, and creativity, and providing enough mental energy to last throughout the day, making them both essential needs in order for employees to operate at their best. The lifestyle changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic have significantly worsened employees' dietary and exercise habits. In one study, over 70% of participants estimated that the pandemic has had a negative impact on their physical activity. More than half said the same about their nutrition, reporting insufficient intakes of fruits and vegetables, among other negative variables, including midnight snacking, poor dietary restraint, stress eating, and alcohol consumption. These can have a considerable impact on employees' overall health, as poor diet and exercise are directly linked to negative health conditions, including obesity, diabetes, strokes, and cardiovascular disease. And as these conditions are also linked to high presenteeism, it's undoubtable that the current state of employees' nutritional health and fitness are exacerbating the current health crisis plaguing the workplace. But just as diet and exercise may be responsible for this crisis, they can also serve as the solutions to it. As I just mentioned, a healthy diet and regular exercise have been proven to reduce infections and symptoms like fatigue or depression, and increase cognition and improve heart health. But not only that, they can also lead to happier, productive, and more efficient employees, as research shows that workplace health initiatives lead to significantly fewer sick days, a reduction in healthcare costs, improved performance, and up to a 45% drop in presenteeism, making proper nutrition and exercise essential to improving not only health, but job performance as well. On that note, joining us now to talk about some of the ways in which employees can practice better eating and exercise habits is Lauren Lisko, Internal Wellness Manager here at Workplace Options. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to chatting today.
Me too. So looking back on the past few years, I was wondering if you could talk to me about some of the main challenges or barriers that you've seen that have maybe made it difficult for individuals to maintain healthy lifestyles during the pandemic. And also what you believe to be some of the best practices, habits, or lifestyle changes that people can make to remediate those issues moving forward.
Well, from my view, the most immediate effect that the onset of the pandemic had on everybody's daily lives was the abrupt interruption, or in many cases, total upheaval of their established day-to-day routines. Many people lost access to their gyms or fitness centers, their grocery stores, their farmers markets where they would buy their produce for their healthy meal preparations, as well as other outlets for self-care, including activities like going to the movies, practicing in clubs or recreational sports, or even going to the library. And we lost social connections to varying degrees as well. Social connections through activities including work, the gym, time with family and friends, and even places of worship in many cases were greatly restricted, if not altogether eliminated. And social connections are essential to our mental and emotional well-being, and they also serve as dual support and accountability for pursuing healthy habits like going to the gym or preparing healthy meals. And also in the beginning of the pandemic, there were fewer resources for people to turn to in order to supplement their health and wellness routines than we have now, including things like mobile apps and virtual fitness outlets and telehealth support. And on top of that, everybody was just grappling with the stress of facing an unprecedented situation in which there was really no certainty in how to navigate or see through. So for many, the weight of these sudden and significant barriers felt really traumatizing, or even deflating and demotivating, which I think ultimately just led to many people feeling a sense of kind of apathy or even hopelessness in regard to continuing to pursue their day-to-day healthy lifestyle. But now, nearly 3 years into the situation, a lot has evolved and adapted to support our lifestyles, but the landscape of many things still does look quite different than before. So I think many people are still having trouble navigating the so-called new normal, and kind of just settling into a sustainable new routine where they face things like a hybrid work environment in some cases. And in many cases, our interactions with one another still remain largely virtual, including even with healthcare providers in many cases. But to your question about practices or specific practices that people can implement moving forward, I feel that one of the most constructive practices that people can reinforce daily is to revise their habits or create new ones one at a time. Over time, and as things continue to kind of settle out more, we'll be able to start to more closely examine what our new schedules are and where we can best prioritize time for health and wellness, including meal prepping, daily exercise routines, and self-care practices. But because many of our daily lives look vastly different than pre-pandemic, it might mean that we have numerous health and wellness goals that we're trying to get back on track. But tackling everything at once can be really overwhelming. So it's much more sustainable and effective to be intentional and focused about building a strong foundation for each habit one at a time. And finding balance is also incredibly important. even though many aspects of our day-to-day life are resuming now, there's still much about the world around us that is kind of unsettled, which can often be challenging for people to cope with and can lead to them deprioritizing their own health and well-being. So it's just really important to remember that not everything about our lives or the world we're living in right now is within our control, but what we can control is the actions that we take over our lifestyle choices and our sense of well-being.
Yeah, thank you. You made so many great points, talking about finding balance and consistency in the midst of, maybe constantly changing social environments. And also you touched upon too, a hybrid working model. So, with the onset of the pandemic, we've seen, hybrid, remote, and in-person working models all kind of happening at the same time and maybe, interchanging constantly. So what are some methods, tricks, or practices that you would recommend to someone who maybe is just now hoping to get started on a path towards, a better, healthier lifestyle, but might be struggling to overcome those challenges associated with these new working models?
Great point. Yeah, and hybrid and remote working models can be challenging for many, but what can help is to just first start to consider the resources and practices that are available to you that align with your particular work model. So, for example, if you're a hybrid worker and you may want to consider joining a gym or a public gym and taking some group fitness classes or working with a trainer maybe on the days that you're also going into the office. This will help to kind of provide some structure around your days out of the house and will also provide accountability with your workout routine. And likewise, you might want to consider taking advantage of the days that you work from home to devote some extra time to planning healthy meals or maybe taking part in some self-care practices, since you'll have a little bit of time back from what you would otherwise have spent commuting to and from the office. For resources to support exercise, hybrid and remote workers both can take advantage of the growing number of options available on virtual platforms, including virtual fitness classes offered by local gyms and clubs in many cases, virtual personal training services, various YouTube channels that are available, and even home video programs. However, for some people, it can be challenging to motivate yourself to work out at home. So sometimes it can be helpful to get your spouse, partner, or friend involved to participate with you and provide some accountability and some fun. And it's also important to remember that fitness can be pursued anywhere, including the outdoors. So for those who are working hybrid or remote schedules, they likely have access to their neighborhood streets or maybe nearby walking trails where they can add in some biking, hiking, or running to their daily routines. But as far as identifying where to, create a good starting point for tackling this challenge, when it comes to the concepts of diet, exercise, or even sleep, emotional well-being, or mental well-being, it's really difficult to kind of pinpoint which one of these is the most important to start on first, since they really all carry a great weight of importance in our lives and in many cases are inextricably linked. So my best advice typically to clients I work with or people who are looking for where to begin their journey is to reflect on all of these pieces of their well-being and identify the aspect that they feel is the easiest to address or that they have the most confidence and resources to address. Mentally, we all thrive on having wins and positive reinforcement. So therefore, if we address a smaller and more achievable goal in our health and wellness first, then that initial success can provide us with the confidence that we need to tackle larger and more complex challenges after that.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with you. It definitely is more helpful to start with, the more achievable goals so that people feel encouraged to continue. And you bring up gyms and self-care practices, and I think those are all great points, but sometimes I do feel that people might be hesitant to start those, especially now with the current cost of living crisis that we're in, because of those hidden kind of costs that people worry about. So maybe what are some cost-effective ways to eating healthy and exercising regularly that you would recommend to employees who might be struggling with their financial situation or who might just be fretting over the prospects of a global recession?
Right. Well, this is definitely a very critical topic right now. And in this industry, the fitness and wellness industry, with so many options that are available in how to pursue healthy eating and exercise, you could easily make it a very expensive pursuit or a very reasonable one, just kind of depending on what you're wanting and willing to do. Gyms and fitness studios can often cost over $100 a month per individual, which is really costly for, most average people. And personal trainers in many cases cost even more than that. And similarly for nutritional services, the use of a private dietitian or a meal planner is very costly, as is buying all organic health products or food items from specialty grocery stores. But, fortunately, none of these things are requirements to pursuing a healthy and holistic lifestyle. For example, there are still several gym chains throughout the country and even the world that keep costs down to less than, $20 a month per individual, which is much more palatable for most people. There are also a lot of credible fitness and exercise apps available for mobile devices that are completely free or maybe just involve like a nominal small monthly rate. Many of these types of apps and programs provide things that are surprisingly thorough, including, visual exercise libraries to see how to safely perform different types of exercises, and even tips on how to mix and match movements together to target different types of fitness goals. Another great option to consider is investing in a few inexpensive small pieces of equipment that you can keep at home, and use either in your home or maybe outdoors to complete a workout in place of, having an ongoing cost of a gym membership. Things like hand weights, resistance bands, and stability balls are a few examples of items that are very inexpensive. They're highly versatile, and most importantly, they're easy to store in your home, and you can incorporate them into a variety of different types of workouts. And even just your own body weight can give you a great workout, and it's completely free. And again, like we talked about before or mentioned briefly, the outdoors can be your gym at any point to achieve a great exercise session, while also yielding the additional benefit to your well-being of just connecting with nature. And similarly with to exercise, healthy eating can also be, achieved very easily without breaking the bank. There are lots of online websites and resources, as well as blogs that offer healthy recipes, many of which focus specifically on accessible and inexpensive ingredients that don't require fancy or expensive kitchen gadgets to make. I found a great resource actually online during the pandemic for healthy one pot meals specifically, and I've been using it regularly ever since. These recipes are healthy, they're practical to make, and they cut down a lot on time and money that's needed while making larger portions of things that I can then repurpose later as leftovers. There are also great resources online that accommodate various dietary restrictions, for if that's something that's applicable to you, including gluten-free, dairy-free, ketogenic, and vegetarian or vegan diets. And if you're seeking guidance on things like caloric intake, or balancing macronutrients for weight loss or weight management, there are also several apps and online resources for that will provide the basics of these types of services at much more affordable cost than like a private nutritionist, for example. And another just easy cost saving tip for healthy eating is to plan your weekly meals around, the sales that your local supermarket is having on meat and produce. Also, just making selections of ingredients that are inexpensive and can help stretch meals further, things like potatoes, rice, and vegetables, is a great way to maximize nutrition while also just saving money. And just practicing simple mindfulness is key as well, in how you shop and meal plan. For example, if you plan your meals for the entire week thoroughly or in detail in advance, and then just only shop for the ingredients that you'll actually need. Planning to incorporate as many whole food items as you can into your recipes is helpful as well, because this is a much healthier approach and it's less costly compared to items that are processed or pre-prepared or pre-packaged, convenience foods, for example. And also just make a plan for how you can reuse or recycle leftovers to make future meals and recycle ingredients, as well as just, make a plan to freeze portions of things that you're not using in the moment, because this can make an additional meal at a later date. It's also important to identify in all of this, I think, the concept of like why someone should be prioritizing their health and fitness, especially in difficult times like, facing a recession and just struggles with the economy in general. When we're faced with difficult external circumstances, it can be really easy to lose sight of the importance of prioritizing our individual health and well-being. However, it's really critical to remember that each of us is our own best resource in the end. So prioritizing taking care of ourselves and to the best of our abilities, we will grant ourselves essentially like an increased layer of protection in the face of any adversity. Strengthening ourselves both in mind and body will help kind of, bolster our sense of resiliency, and as well as our self-confidence, our perseverance, our ability to cope and take on challenges really of any magnitude. And like we touched on before, there are many aspects of life and the world around us that are kind of beyond our control, specifically including things like the state of the economy, even though it does have a very direct and real impact on our lives. However, we do, have autonomy over our own physical and emotional well-being. So again, just taking ownership over our health and prioritizing it, even in the most difficult of times, can help us from feeling totally out of control.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point too, especially when we talk about, kind of the effects that financial stress can have on people's both short and long-term health. We talk about, things that are out of our control. Well, something that is in our control is, kind of what we're able to do, in the office, in our spaces. So, in recent years, the number of employees who use standing desks, for example, has more than tripled, rising from 13% in 2013 and now almost half of employees, are now using them. So what are some other ways that employees can factor in maybe better dietary and exercise habits into their workday, whether they're working from home or at the office?
Yeah, great question. Practicing proper workspace ergonomics with both seated and standing postures is definitely a great step towards reducing things like pain, discomfort, and immobility that is associated with spending a lot of time in each of our days in a seated position and working. Typically, I'll encourage people to set an alarm on their phone or maybe their computer, so that, about once an hour or so, they can switch between a seated or standing posture, or at least just stand up for a few minutes to do about 3 to 5 minutes or so of brief exercise. There are a few simple practices to staying active during the day that you can use regardless of your work location. So whether you're at home or in the office. One very easy way to do this is with a quick 15-minute metabolic walk, nothing fancy. This can be done really at any time of the day to be effective, but typically I'll encourage people to do this around lunchtime, just as a way to kind of mark the midpoint of the workday and then get their muscles activated a little bit after a few hours of sitting or standing still. Another simple but really effective way to incorporate some basic physical activity into your workday is with some quick strength or cardio movements that can be done either at or near your workstation. This is a rapidly growing concept actually known as deskercise, and it typically involves about 10 to 15 minutes of just simple circuit training or body weight movements that target various aspects of fitness, including things like strength, aerobic conditioning, flexibility, mobility, or even balance. Sometimes intervals are incorporated to increase the level of intensity and elicit like a greater calorie burn in a shorter period of time. This activity is also a great counterpart to a daily metabolic walk, since the walk is more of a low impact and steady state activity that doesn't incorporate strength or intervals. And in regards to dietary habits, dedicating time to meal and snack preparation before the start of each work week is a really critical way to ensuring that you have healthy choices readily available. Without planning and preparation, most people will resort to dining in restaurants or ordering out for lunch during a busy work day, or just simply snacking on convenience foods that are often high in fat and sugar. It's really important to remember that proper nutrition does not only fuel our body to perform better during exercise sessions, but it also fuels our minds to maximize things like our alertness, creativity, engagement, and memory retention so that we can be more effective at our jobs. It's important to consider spending an hour or so on the evening, maybe before the start of your work week, whenever that is, to prepare some healthy meal and lunch options, as well as snack options too, and portion them out in advance so that they're ready to grab and go, whether you're going to be working from home or at the office. However, in a pinch, if you do find that you have to go out to eat to attend a lunch meeting for work, or if you just simply forget your packed lunch at home, which happens to all of us sometimes, be sure to thoroughly just review menu options and nutritional information if it's made available to make the most health conscious choice possible that you can in order to stay on track with your goals.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all some great tips. To circle back to the standing desk for a second, studies show that, not only are employees finding ways to improve, some of their dietary and exercise habits in the workplace, but their employers are starting to as well. Nearly 2/3 offer standing desks now to their employees, for example. And additionally, more than 9 in 10 organizations now offer at least one wellness incentive in their workplace. So on that note, what would be your advice to an employer who may be considering offering any type of, wellness program, service, or resource to their workers? And what incentives would you strongly recommend?
Yeah, well, when considering what types of programs and incentives to offer, I think it's best to start first with just looking at your overall employee base. Consider the overall demographics of your employees, including things like their age ranges, their lifestyles, cultural influences, income levels, access to time and resources that your employees have, as well as what their primary motivations might be for pursuing health and wellness. Surveys, simple surveys can be a really useful tool to gauge interest in various types of programs that it might be up for consideration. But oftentimes this process just requires some simple trial and error. like introducing a program like a wellness challenge, for example, and just seeing that if it's something that when put into practice garners excitement and participation across employees. Employers also do need to factor in the manpower, time, money, and other resources that they'll be able to allocate to creating and carrying out different types of wellness programs. So for example, some companies will offer simple and straightforward programs that require less oversight and management, including things like stipends for gym memberships and reductions on health insurance rates based on participation in an annual health screening. Other companies that will offer more extensive and engaging programs, including things like on-site staff gyms, on-site fitness classes, interactive wellness challenges, lunch and learns with guest speakers, and employee health events. But above all, I think that the biggest consideration to keep in mind first is that implementing programs and incentives that are directed at employee well-being has been shown to greatly support an employee's sense of work-life balance, their overall happiness and job satisfaction, job retention, and it also reduces the number of sick days and health insurance claims used. But most importantly, though, these programs do help to boost morale and create a strong workplace culture where employees can feel genuinely cared for beyond just the value that they provide through their professional role. And there are many unique and creative ways that wellness programs and incentives can be approached. A few just simple examples include gym membership reimbursement programs, rewards-based programs for participation in daily walks or desk exercise activities, and organizing sessions for nutritional counseling, massage therapy, or wellness coaching even that are sponsored by or paid for by the company. It's also beneficial to consider offering wellness-focused activities that involve employees engaging with one another or working together in some cases to enhance the social well-being of the company and boost morale, like I mentioned a moment ago. For example, organizing activities such as healthy cooking classes, yoga classes, 5K runs, trips to a local farmer's market, or even guided hikes are all great ways to expose employees to healthy habits in settings that are fun and collaborative. Holding a wellness challenge is another great way to create a program for employees that helps them adopt healthier lifestyles while also increasing social engagement. Wellness challenges can center really on any type of health and wellness topic, from nutrition to fitness to sleep to hydration to self-care and other healthy habits. And they should be creative in nature, inviting the employees to pursue the activities within the challenge in their own unique ways. Wellness challenges can include monetary prizes sometimes, or even paid time off to just further motivate them to take part and be rewarded for their accomplishments as well. As an example of this, in the recent past, I led a cookbook challenge for the employees at our organization that focused on what we termed healthy-ish recipes, where we just kind of laid out some just simple parameters for what defines a healthy recipe, and then invited the employees to create and design their own recipe cards for breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, and snack options. This was not only just a great challenge to get employees to put different healthy cooking tips into practice, but it also helped them just to kind of like share their recipes with one another and showcase the vast cultural influence of our global organization. But ultimately, really the key for any wellness program or initiative that a company were to put into place is to make the experience feel enjoyable, practical, and sustainable so that it has a lasting impact.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all some really great strategies. And, to bring up what you mentioned about reimbursement programs and participation incentives, for example, I think one challenge that employers run into with these sometimes is that, their employees lack health literacy and they might not know, for example, what to participate in or, maybe what some of the benefits of these programs would be for their health. So on that note, what are some resources or techniques that people can engage with that might be able to improve their nutritional literacy and foster a better understanding of their health needs and the health benefits of these services?
Yeah, great point. This is definitely a challenge that many people face, where I think that they're wanting to make changes, but they don't quite know how to start or where to get started and don't have the sufficient context maybe or understanding of fitness, nutrition, and well-being to kind of know how to make meaningful changes. It's so important that the wellness industry continues to make an effort to put forth practices and tools for people of all educational levels, learning aptitudes, and cultural or language backgrounds to be able to enhance their understanding and also just empower them to improve their own health and well-being. For anybody out there who's wanting to learn more, it's really important first just to be brave enough to ask questions, very specific questions about what it is that you want to learn and also just be open and honest about what your baseline understanding is so that a professional can better guide you. Reach out to professionals across the health fields that you would like to learn more about and that you feel that you can communicate with in terms that you understand. And don't be afraid either to ask that they use broader and more relatable terms instead of the clinical or formal references to things. A health professional who is proficient in imparting good health literacy will be strong in their ability to illustrate health information through the use of things like, anecdotes, metaphors, maybe visual images in some cases, or just other devices to bring kind of meaning and context to how different health practices can be meaningfully applied to somebody's life. Finding health professionals that you can trust and who will meet you where you are in your journey is a really great gateway to improving health literacy. And there are several online and government provided resources that are specifically targeted at this goal of improving health literacy. Some of these include the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, the Society for Public Health Education, and the AHRQ, which is the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. Many of these resources facilitate improved health literacy by, drawing connections to how your access to resources, your social support around you, as well as your environmental and situational circumstances directly impact your state of well-being. You might also have access to opportunities at work, maybe, or online or within your local community to attend lectures and seminars where you can ask questions of professionals in the field. But starting a new journey with health and fitness and just kind of wading through all of the information, education, terminology and trends that are out there can be a really overwhelming process. So it's important to lean on the people and resources available to you for support. Family members and trusted friends are honestly a really great place to start if you're just looking for some support and accountability as you pursue, the course of bettering your health. These people are the ones who are closest to us and know us best, and they can often help us identify the specific resources and services that would best match our unique individual needs. And these people are also best equipped to give us the confidence boost that we need to take the first steps. Many workplace organizations also will offer a variety of employee assistance programs to their employees as a part of their benefits package at little to no cost to them, which is a really great opportunity as well. These programs can span across facets of health and well-being to include things like support with housing, financial literacy and wellness, lifestyle coaching, smoking cessation programs, counseling and therapy, accessing healthcare professionals, legal assistance, child and elder care programs, and more. So anyone currently working for an organization and seeking additional accountability and health resources should inquire as to what is available to them and how to begin accessing it. But for those who are not currently employed or who are just working for part of an organization that without these types of benefits available to them, there are public community resources that can provide support and assistance as well. For example, the NACHC is the National Association of Community Health Centers. And this association is centered on connecting individuals of any background, language, income level, and health status with accessible, effective, comprehensive, and high quality care. Also here in North Carolina specifically, there is a subset of the NC Department of Health and Human Services that is a community health program and operates on the same core principles as the NACHC. And there are websites online available for both of these for anybody who's just seeking more detailed information.
Yeah, thank you. And, I love that at one point in the beginning, you had called it a health journey, because it is a journey. Mm-hmm. I think that a trap that a lot of people fall into when it comes to trying to shift to a healthier lifestyle is that they expect to see, immediate tangible results, just to be disappointed when those results maybe don't manifest, in the first days, weeks, or even month of performing those new behaviors. So what advice would you give to someone that's maybe struggling with these lofty or unrealistic expectations? And how can individuals work to maybe reframe their thinking in those moments where it looks like nothing is improving for them?
Right. Well, whether people are overweight, underweight, out of shape, or just lacking in strength, I always remind clients I work with that they did not arrive here overnight. So they can't then expect to get to their, idealized state overnight either, as much as we all wish it worked that way. For many people, their current health status or their fitness status and body composition reflects months or even years of unhealthy habits that have been reinforced over and over again. So then this process needs to be reversed essentially, where we establish new healthy habits and goals that we then reinforce with dedication and consistency over the course of weeks, months, and even years to achieve specific goals that the client might have and ultimately just lead to a healthier lifestyle overall. When we decide that we want something and we even visualize the result in our minds, it's very easy to become overeager for it to manifest in reality. And therefore, we become frustrated when it doesn't happen quite that way. However, as you mentioned, this frustration often results in a very vicious cycle of stopping and starting a journey towards a healthy lifestyle. So instead, I really try to encourage the people I work with and the clients I serve to find a way to enjoy the process of working towards a goal rather than focusing only on the end result. I've really watched, many long-term clients over the years encounter success with this process. In many cases, they learn to look at each workout as a win towards their goal, even if they don't necessarily see or feel tangible differences from each workout to the next. In some cases, they learn to view their workout time as synonymous with their me time or time that's just dedicated for themselves. And that makes them feel a heightened sense of self-esteem and self-worth that motivates them to continue. Other times, clients will learn to just enjoy the aspects of exercising that are centered on performance rather than the results on the scale. So for instance, they'll start to notice that they're able to lift a little more weight, able to work out a little harder and longer without stopping to catch their breath, and just kind of feel how their overall fitness level is starting to improve. And feeling these improvements in their fitness is often enough in and of itself to spur them on to remain consistent. The most powerful part, I think, of this method of just getting clients to appreciate the process itself is that when they're focused very hard on how hard they're working each time they step into the gym and how their body is responding and adapting to the increased challenges, most people will find that they don't want to quit because they don't want to lose all their hard work and then have to kind of begin building from the ground up again. And ultimately, I just think it's a much more sustainable way to pursue a long-term and healthy relationship with exercise. But it's also incredibly important to help people in managing their expectations when it comes to results that they want or expect in the gym. Every single person is unique and has their own distinct body type and has a different genetic potential to build strength, speed, endurance, and stamina. So pursuing exercise to achieve a goal based on someone else's body type is a toxic process, and it can often lead to disappointment, frustration, and low self-esteem or even low body image. So again, instead, people should really focus on exercising to achieve their healthiest possible body, which really has little to do with how it looks, honestly, and much more to do with what it can provide them. Things like strength, mobility, the ability to participate in their daily activities free of pain and injury, and most importantly, long-term independence as they age.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's really interesting, too, that you mentioned how, sometimes people get caught in these toxic processes where, they're doing things because maybe it benefited someone else, but, those habits don't really align with their needs, maybe their body weight or the functions of their body. And, you said it's hard to break away from unhealthy habits. And it's interesting because, a lot of those times, those unhealthy habits are often disguised as healthy habits, especially when we talk about diet culture. So on that note, in your experience, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to trying to practice, healthier habits? Are there any current or recent health trends that you're noticing that you find to be concerning? And how can individuals be mindful of some of the information that's out there, both online and across social media, that could perhaps steer them in the wrong direction?
Well, I try not to focus too much on specific trends or fads in the fitness and health industry because these are countless and they often come and go. And they're notorious for not being exactly sustainable approaches to health and well-being. Simply put, the old adage of if it's too good to be true, it probably is, very much applies to the wellness world in all aspects. If there are products, regimens, supplements, or services that are marketed as shortcuts really in any way to weight loss or just better health, they usually involve taking on unsustainable and sometimes unhealthy behaviors for what are often only short-term results. For example, diets that are highly calorie restrictive or eliminate entire food groups to result in fast short-term weight loss often end up resulting in the weight kind of just piling back on as soon as the person ends the diet. These types of fad diets also tend to impart little to no, real hearty education on how to truly understand nutrition or discriminate between healthy and unhealthy food choices or balancing macronutrients. I generally try to steer people towards adopting an old-fashioned whole foods approach that incorporates just a variety of whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats, vegetables, fruits, and fiber to maximize their nutrient density without eliminating any major food group. With exercise, similarly, I believe the most concerning concept on people's view of fitness and their body image is social media. Many people I've worked with seem to have shaped their entire understanding of what a healthy body is or looks like based on what they have seen from Instagram or Facebook influencers, for example, and they seem set to attain that for themselves. But like we just kind of touched on a moment ago, this is not a realistic or sustainable way for people to approach exercise, since each person is unique and can't expect to just replicate somebody else's body composition. I strongly encourage people that I work with to value the pursuit of fitness for the health benefits it imparts on us, just by things like reducing our risk for chronic illness and extending our quality of life and independence, rather than kind of get caught up in the idea of obtaining a particular body image or number on the scale. Everyone's relationship and journey with health and wellness is unique, and it can be hard to determine from the kind of abundance of information and examples that we see online and on social media what is rooted in reality and science and what is simply distraction. So I really try to always advise people to turn to professionals in the field, whether it's nutritionists, healthcare providers, personal trainers, or athletic trainers, and other just members of the allied health fields to give them proper guidance and support.
Yeah, I love that you talked about, improving health and, quality of life and, chronic conditions and things like that, and not just, changing someone's body image or their appearance. Because as I talked about in the beginning, maintaining a balanced diet and getting enough exercise can significantly improve, both individuals' mental and emotional health, not only their physical health. And while these benefits are much needed for employees who may be struggling with burnout, anxiety, and depression, it can be hard for people under those conditions to maybe change their habits in order to attain them. So what advice do you have to someone who may be struggling with their mental health and is looking for small incremental ways that they can work toward improving both their nutritional and physical health over time, in order to maybe gradually reap those benefits?
Right. Well, as someone who struggled with these issues myself at various times, I definitely understand how the mental process and the ability to change our behaviors can function kind of on a continuum. So for example, like when we're in a negative mental state, it often feels like we're powerless to do anything about our situation or to improve our situation until we feel better about things in order to do so. And at the same time, it feels like we cannot take action or make changes because we aren't in the right frame of mind and don't feel well enough to do so, or to just be present in the moment of it. This type of thinking often results in us just kind of remaining stuck in our current situation. And in reality, we have to take the steps first, even when it feels most difficult or we just can't see at the time how or when it will help, in order to start to see and experience the positive changes to our mood, our state of mind, and our quality of life. One of the simplest and most effective ways to start working towards changing your behaviors and improving your mental well-being is to just take one step at a time, one day at a time. When we're already feeling, emotionally vulnerable and our confidence is shaken, it can feel paralyzing to try to think of manipulating all of our behaviors at once in order to try to yield some sort of improvement somewhere. So it's a much more approachable method to just kind of start each day off with one goal in mind, one win that you would like to kind of achieve for that day, and then go after it. And then before bed, consider journaling your progress and growth for that day, even if it's just a sentence or two. This can just provide a system for you to track your state of mind and your behaviors, and most importantly, will help to affirm your growth and progress as you navigate towards a healthier state of being in both mind and body. Then this way, even on the days where things get to feeling really challenging again and it seems impossible to see success, you'll have the tangible proof written down right in front of you to indicate that you are in control of your outcomes and you do have the strength to persevere.
Thank you. This has been so insightful, Lauren. I want to thank you so much again for taking the time to talk with me today. And to the listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Take care.